Welcome to the Rapid Research Podcast, where two friends answer the big questions after searching the internet for 30 minutes.
Hey, welcome into Rapid Research, where we take a random topic, do some research for just about a half hour, and give you the results. My name is Tyler Juvenal.
I'm Joe Montgomery. Be sure to follow us at Rapid Research Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Now, the topic for today's research is animals in warfare. Now, this is a subject that I know very little about. Tyler, I think, knows a little bit more about this than I would.
So the only thing that I can think of when it comes to animals that have been weaponized or animals in warfare, a couple years ago, we were doing the music tour on the road, and we were doing the PowerPoint night. And at the PowerPoint night, I think Claire ended up doing a presentation on Army dolphins, but I think Matthew created the presentation. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, yeah.
So basically, none of us had ever heard of them before, and the front picture was Vladimir Putin in the water with a dolphin.
I forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah. So I don't remember how they weaponized the dolphins or how they used them in warfare. The only thing I can think of is like the surveillance aspect of like seeing if ships are in your harbor or something like that. But I don't know. It's a bizarre concept.
Yeah. I don't think that they had killer dolphins.
That would be terrifying.
It would be. But I mean, to be fair, dolphins naturally rescue people. So, what would it be like if dolphins naturally killed people?
I hope to never find out.
I guess that's called a shark.
It is a shark.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else? What other animals are used in warfare? Obviously, you've got horses.
You got Hannibal with the elephants in the Alps.
Hannibal's elephants in the Alps. Yep. I think of like homing pigeons. I think they took messages back and forth, if I'm remembering correctly.
According to the illustrious Sean Spencer via Psych, America has never lost a war where donkeys were involved.
Oh, I guess that's true.
That's true.
France should probably take up that little bit of advice there.
Oof. Just throwing the French under the bus today.
Under the bus.
Gracious. Under the bus.
I am French, Juvenal, so I can say whatever I want about the French people because I am one of them.
My last name's Montgomery, so I'm hated by all French.
Indeed.
Oh, man. I was wondering, though, like, what would warfare have looked like if certain animals had not gone extinct?
Such as?
So like, woolly mammoths, right? Like, I know we used, like, war elephants, but war woolly mammoths would be...
It'd be like an Oliphant.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like that.
Like you just put this big city on top of this woolly mammoth, and you got archers and everything.
Oh man, dude, that'd be nuts.
I mean, okay, but I mean, how much of a how great of an impact is it actually? If anything, I mean that elephant is getting absolutely killed by arrows. I mean, if you have a bow and arrow, you're not shooting the guys that are standing next to the woolly mammoth. You're shooting the woolly mammoth.
Right, but that gives time for the guy standing next to the woolly mammoth to charge up and slice your head off.
So it's a sacrificial mammoth.
It is a sacrificial mammoth.
All right, and with that, we are going to go research the sacrificial mammoths and the other sacrificial animals that have helped humanity in waging warfare on each other.
All right, I'll see you in 30 minutes.
Hey, welcome back into Rapid Research. We're back, and we researched animals in warfare.
We did. There are some doozies.
Honestly, it's a treasure trove of just historical facts, probably some fiction in there. But I honestly, and I just want to make this statement up front, I'm not like bowing to PETA or anything, but the fact that animals have been used in conflict in certain ways is not a great thing, but it happened. And so history is history. We don't back away from it.
Yeah. I'm going to be real. Most of the stuff that I found is either massively inspiring or absolutely hilarious.
I stayed away from the inspiring stuff.
Okay. Do you want to start with inspiring or do you want to start with not inspiring?
Yeah, tell me all the inspiring stuff you found.
Okay. So the first inspiring things that I found were actually about carrier pigeons. So in 1917, General John Pershing requested the founding of the United States Army Pigeon Service. Okay. Now, I want to make clear, this lasted for 40 years.
Oh my, well, I read that pigeons were used in both world wars.
Right, and they lasted another like 10, 15 years after World War II ended. Because that ended in what, 46?
45, for sure.
45? Yeah, okay. So 45, and it went till 1957.
Oh, wow.
So
don't know what they were doing, but they continued on there.
Indeed. This branch of the Army ended up having over 3,000 soldiers involved and over 54,000 pigeons.
That's a lot of messages, dude.
Dude, that's all of New York.
That's so many.
Like all of New York's pigeons.
Did you check that? I'm going to fact check that while you talk.
I didn't fact check. It's probably way more than that. But if you think about just what you see in Times Square, pigeon-wise, in like a year.
Estimates of the number of pigeons in New York City range from 500,000 to 9 million.
Okay, I was so wrong.
That's
okay.
a really wide estimate. 500,000 to 9 million.
That's a
huge
there's no margin of error.
There's no middle ground there. It's either there are 500,000 or there are 9 million pigeons.
If they ever do a census of the pigeons and it's like 10 million, I'm going to be really ticked that they didn't go far enough with that.
That's so many
estimate.
Pigeons.
So many.
I don't understand how you live with that many pigeons in your city.
So on the low end, 10% of New York pigeons were in the Army at one point. Okay. So, that's not true at all. But
these were all trained. These were trained pigeons.
Yes.
That's
these
a
were
higher
trained
class.
Pigeons.
That's
yes.
a higher class.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, they actually got a bunch of racing pigeons and acquired them. That's actually a thing.
What?
So racing
stop it. This is not a thing.
Dude, there is a racing pigeon Hall of Fame.
Are you kidding? I'm fact checking this. Pigeon racing is a sport of releasing specifically trained homing pigeons, which then return to their homes over a carefully measured distance. Are you... What? Prior to the sale, the previously most expensive pigeon was Nadine, a bird that sold for $450,000 to a Chinese buyer in 2017. For comparison, the average price for a good racing pigeon is in the $2,800 range.
$2,800.
What?
For a racing pigeon.
Oh, what?
Okay.
What? On average of 30% of pigeons are lost during each race. Wait. Google continues. What to do if I find a racing pigeon? Well, you've got a pretty good possibility of finding one. Protect, release, report, and contact. Report the RSPCA. That is wild.
That is the most insane thing. Like, I just kind of glossed over the fact that there were racing pigeons, and I'm glad that you made me stop and realize how insane that sentence is.
Pigeons can fly at average speeds of 77 miles an hour.
Dude, I'm going to...
And they can fly between 600 and 700 miles a day.
Dude, we're going to get to some crazy stuff that happened in the military.
Is pigeon racing on a decline?
You think?
Okay, I have to stop. Okay, we're coming back. Where are we at? Tell me more about pigeons.
Okay. I'm going to tell you about two of the most famous pigeon stories. Okay. So first of all, this one, his name was G.I. Joe. Okay. That was his name, named by the company. Now, air support had been requested by, I believe, the Americans as they were going in to try and take a town in Germany. No, it was in Italy. They were going in to try and take a town. And they had requested support, like shelling to begin. But before the shelling started, British troops came up and took the town. So they didn't need to bomb it. But now there are civilians and British soldiers in the town. And it's about to be bombed. So they release a pigeon named G.I. Joe to travel back to the base to call off the bombing. It traveled 20 miles in 20 minutes. Got there just as the planes were about to take off.
That's 60, that's 60 miles an hour.
60 miles an hour.
Which, according to racing pigeons, that is kind of on the low end of the spectrum.
On the low end. To be fair, this was the 40s or whatever.
Pigeons have gotten faster since the 40s, is what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, now you got pigeons on roids and all that stuff. And
tell you what, that is what's killing pigeon racing these days is the roids.
My personal favorite of the pigeon stories that I found is
it
one
named Cher Ami?
It is Cher Ami. I love Cher Ami.
Cher Ami. I saw that one as well. All I know is that Cher Ami saved the battalion.
Okay, so Cher Ami means dear friend.
Dear
in
friend.
French. So Americans had gotten pinned down in this little divot area, and there were Germans all around them. They couldn't get out easily. And then Americans didn't know that they were there and start shelling in that area. So they're taking friendly fire of bombs raining down right all around them. And so the commander sends a pigeon, which immediately gets shot.
Oh.
Because the Germans had kind
Cher
of
got shot?
No, well, we're getting to Cher. This is the first one.
Okay,
so
good.
The first one immediately gets killed because Germans would see, and this was another story I saw too, when Germans saw a pigeon, they would all immediately open fire at the pigeon to try and take the pigeon down.
This was before they invented 12-gauge shotguns.
So they sent the first pigeon gets obliterated. They send a second pigeon. That pigeon also gets blown to bits. And they're like, well, we got nothing else. So they send a third pigeon named Cher Ami with the message, quote, "We are along the road parallel to 276.24. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on top of us. For heaven's sake, stop it." So, which is just the most American thing ever.
That's that's very American.
We're just like, guys, seriously.
Are you kidding me?
So Cher Ami starts to fly away and immediately gets shot.
Oh.
And flutters to the ground. And then gets back up and keeps flying.
Go Cher.
Cher's awesome. And he flies the rest of the way to deliver the message. Now, the slightly less awesome thing is that they'd actually stopped the shelling about 5 minutes before he got there. But he still went the whole way to try and save the battalion. And he gets there, he'd been shot through the breast, blinded in one eye, and one of his legs was hanging on by a tendon. So he'd taken some stuff. Now, this is the thing I love about Americans.
I'm not gonna lie. It doesn't sound like it was worth it for him to have gone through all of that.
I don't think it was, except for if they'd kept shelling. If they had kept shelling, it would have been worth it. You know.
Okay.
So this is the thing I absolutely love about Americans, is that the Army medics took one look at this pigeon and were like, this pigeon must be saved, and went to work saving this pigeon from death, and were able to save the pigeon from death. Mm-hmm. And he, as soon as he was recovered enough to be able to travel, he went off with a personal send-off from General John Pershing himself.
That is magical.
It is, and he is now stuffed and on display in the Smithsonian.
Wait, how did they get him back?
Well, they sent him home.
Oh.
Because he was alive. They saved his life and sent him home.
Okay. I mean, okay.
Yeah, and now he's stuffed in the Smithsonian.
All right. Well, that's great. That's great. Good old Cher, stuffed in the Smithsonian.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. What do you got?
We were talking earlier about dolphins. I got the scoop on them.
Yep.
We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on them. But there is this U.S.-based program called the Marine Mammal Program. And they actually started off with more than a dozen different species of animals. So you had stuff like sharks, like stingrays, sea turtles, and then a bunch of different types of birds.
Jellyfish?
No, not on the list. But basically, all these different animals, they were testing out like their physical capabilities, their different senses and stuff, to see what would be the best animal to train for military purposes. The only ones that they found to be really worth the time and effort and money put into training them were the dolphins and actually sea lions as well. So both dolphins and sea lions are used by the U.S. military in California. So dolphins, to answer our question from before, dolphins are used with their sonar abilities to detect mines on the ocean floor. And,
Interesting.
And then sea lions are trained to recover objects from the ocean floor by attaching recovery lines to Navy equipment. So, that's what they do. Because they can see and breathe underwater, apparently.
So I actually found another little tidbit on dolphins.
Okay.
And that they are used for one other thing, which is that they are used to defend against enemy divers in American waters.
Oh.
Which what they do is they will they're trained to bump into the foreign diver, and it attaches a little buoy to them and makes the diver float to the surface. Which
That's
is
really
hilarious.
funny.
Can you imagine being like the Navy SEAL version of like the Russians? I don't know who they would be. And then like you've trained all your life for this moment, and then a frickin' dolphin bumps into you and you get captured.
You just blow up. You just float to the surface.
Dang it.
All right. What do you think? What do you think the annual budget of the Marine Mammal Program is?
$240 million.
No, you're up by 200 million. It's 40 million.
Okay.
That's still a lot.
That's still a lot.
That's so much money spent on dolphins and sea lions.
It's a lot of money. I love that.
All right. Do you have any short, interesting things?
There are two more modern alternatives to dogs doing bomb sniffing, which is first rats have been used in recent years, because they are lighter and cheaper.
Okay.
Because they're lighter, they're less likely to set off a mine, and they're obviously cheaper than a dog. The other version is actually bees.
I did read a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they're trained to pick up the scent of bombs with their antennae. And the problem that they ran into is that they can train the bees to find them, but you can't see where the bees go in a massive field. So they have actually developed drones to fly overhead of the bees to track the bees to find out where the bombs are.
That's a very around the outside process.
It really is.
That's a lot. I found something interesting also about bees. Back in European history, back in the medieval times, they used beehives and wasp nests as warheads.
Really?
Yes. So on boats in the middle of the sea, they would catapult beehives onto their decks to clear them off.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No.
They're like firing they're firing at you, and then all of a sudden just these beehives start hitting the deck. And I mean, what are you going to do?
That one guy who's allergic just dives over.
Yeah. I'm out. I'm absolutely out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. They also, back in medieval times, they would also fill portions of their interior or their exterior castle walls with beehives, so that if they did get broken open, the people who broke them open would be stung.
That's smart. That's actually very smart.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Did you find anything about bugs?
Not on bugs, no.
Okay, I found a little thing on bugs.
What you got?
In Uzbekistan, well, I mean, bees are bugs, but in 19th century Uzbekistan, they had bug pits filled with assassin bugs that would eat the flesh of the people who got put in there. They were like 21 feet deep, and they were just filled with bugs. So there were ticks in
That's
there.
like...
There were, there were assassin bugs that are like an inch long, and they have like these hooks that like dig into your flesh.
Golly.
Yeah, it ain't great, pal.
Dude, that's like the most hard torture I've ever heard. Like, I think I'd rather be waterboarded than have to be chucked into a pit of insects that want to eat me.
I always say it ain't waterboarding if it's diesel. Like, what about that kind of waterboarding?
Okay, I did specify water boarding, not diesel boarding, but dude, that would
seriously, diesel boarding
okay.
or 19th century Uzbekistan bug pit.
I'll do you one better than diesel boarding, like whipping cream boarding.
That's not as bad, dude.
Dude, I think that'd be worse.
Why?
For me, it's just red Kool-Aid.
You're not ingesting it. You're trying not to breathe it in. You're just like, this is fine.
This is fine. I love that.
All right, what else you got?
So what is the natural predator of those bugs is bats.
Bats. I saw this as well.
So during World War II, as the U.S. was planning for an invasion into Japan, the bat bomb was developed. Now, the bat bomb was developed to contain 26 trays that each held 40 hibernating bats. Each bat would be outfitted with an individual incendiary device that was set to detonate after a certain amount of time. Now, Japanese cities were mostly wood and paper constructed at the time. And so the bombs would just go off as the bats would go and find a place to nest. And so it was just going to wreak havoc on the entirety of Japan. But the project was eventually superseded by the atomic bomb.
Yeah,
Which is a slightly more powerful device.
well, yeah.
but-
So I saw that it was superseded by like the flying fortress, which carried or like the invention of the larger planes that could bomb better. But I also read on that one of the reasons that they got rid of the program was because the bats didn't always fly to the right place. I read that in test runs, the bats would sometimes fly back to the test hangar or crash into the nearest building because they couldn't fly with the bomb.
Oh, that's...
And so at one point, a military base blew up. I don't know whose, but they set fire to a military base, and it was not the one they were supposed to be targeting.
That's really unfortunate. Hey, I have something to follow up on that comment before you go to your next one, which is, so we know that dogs have been used in warfare for a very long time, whether it's setting lines or just as bomb sniffing or anything like that. So the Soviets were going to use dogs in World War II, and they were to be fair to them, they were caught very off guard in World War II when the Germans turned on them. So they had to come up with some really quick plans of attack for the Eastern Front. And so they trained dogs to go underneath German tanks and plant a bomb and then come back. The problem was this didn't work. And so they started actually...
I could think of like 25 ways that would not work.
So what they did instead is they started just strapping the bomb to the dog, training it to go under, and putting they put a tripwire on the top so that the bomb would just blow up underneath. Now
that's not very nice to that puppy.
It's not. I am also dubbing these comma canines. I hope that's okay with you. Oh. But
that's Joel.
So no, hold on. Hold on.
That's worse than the sacrificial mammoth.
No, let me cook for a sec. So the Soviets did this, but they had their just desserts. Because the problem was that
they're
they didn't
just
think
desserts.
You've never heard that phrase?
They're just desserts? What does that mean?
If you get your just desserts, it means you got what you had coming to you.
Okay, continue.
Okay, so they got what they had coming to them.
Okay, that's great. No kidding.
So the problem they didn't think through is that they trained the dogs with Soviet tanks.
Of course. Who else would they train them with?
So the dogs would run out and then run back and dive under a Soviet tank and blow up their own tank.
Oh, my.
Because the Soviets were idiots.
How many people died?
I didn't see that
How
number,
many Soviet? Oh, my word. Why would you... Idiots.
I feel like that is just recompense, though, for killing dogs willy-nilly.
It could... that's probably... Yeah, that's probably right on.
Here's the amazing thing is, though, that program existed until 1996.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. So the Soviet... I'm assuming they upgraded from comma canines, but they definitely had the program.
Okay, so
for a long time.
We've talked about bat bombs. We've talked about comma canines. They did the same thing with pigeons, where they strapped a bomb to pigeons, and a British base blew up because it flew backwards. So we have bat bombs were a failure. We have comma canines were a failure. We have pigeon bombs being a failure. The Germans tried cat bombs in 1940s. And guess what the French wanted to come on board with? Because, of course, the French don't want to be left out. Everybody
Except
was
for in
strapping bombs to animals. Of course, the French wanted to be a part of it.
French, stop.
You get a bomb and you get a bomb. Let's strap this bomb to all these different things. The French
No,
people
stop.
strap bombs to frogs. And guess what the frogs did?
Blew up the French?
Nothing. They went into hibernation because they couldn't carry the weight of the bomb. Why does it take so long for us as humans to realize maybe strapping a bomb to an animal and setting it off is not the best thing we can do?
Just shoot the other guy, guys.
Just throw it. Throw the bomb.
Yeah, just throw it. Get a big catapult. You don't need to strap it.
Yes. Gracious.
Like, in theory, all of these things are good ideas. I have one more great
Where they
idea
strapped a
turned
bomb to
terrible
something?
idea. No, we're off of bombs.
Okay, good.
We're off
Sick
of bombs.
I'm sick
okay?
of bombs.
So this might be worse. So this is American.
Already better.
So I believe this was during the height of the Cold War. Okay, we were looking for advantages in intelligence, and the CIA had the brilliant idea of what if we used cats for surveillance. And they did, I kid you not, this is the name of the operation. They commenced with Operation Acoustic Kitty.
Why acoustic?
Because they performed a surgery on the cat
Oh.
where there was a microphone put into their ear canal. There was a transmitter placed at the base of their skull and an antenna running along their spine.
Surveillance.
Now, surveillance. Now, here's the thing. The idea was they were like, okay, the obvious drawback is that you can only train a cat so much.
Yeah, I don't think you can train a cat
Like-
at all. I think that's off the
So-
table. Like, you just send...
Okay.
I don't know what the purpose of this is, but if I had it, I just send it out somewhere and hope it picks up some nice stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I want to make clear that this cost $20 million.
Well, yeah, you had to do it right. Like,
Right.
Americans, we
I
spare
think-
no expense.
Right, on one cat. Pretty sure on one cat.
One cat.
And here's the thing, they tried it with one cat because there was a kind of like a Soviet compound in Washington, D.C. They went like across the street, let the cat go, and it immediately got squashed by a taxi cab.
Oh, no. All I was picturing was this white news van pulls up to the front. The door opens, a cat gets kicked out, door closes, and the news van drives off. And it's just like, okay, go do our spy work.
And then it's a taxi cab just comes right.
Get out of the way. That's really funny.
I wish I could just like meet the agent who was the one who let the cat go, and just I want to see the video of them just like their faces just melting as they see the taxi cab coming in slow motion.
They're just like, no.
So obviously, as soon as this happened, the program was completely scrapped.
They're like, yeah, well, $20 million down the drain.
Yeah. My favorite image, though, is actually of, like, whoever was president at the time. Like, if it's, like, Reagan, just, like, getting the memo. Like, he's just like, hey.
What is this for?
Give me the update on Operation Acoustic Kitty. That'd be Nixon. Acoustic Kitty.
Acoustic kitty.
And they're like, well, sir, the cat got hit by a taxi.
No.
It's like, did we get anything out of that? He's like, again.
Freaking again? All
Oh
right.
my word, I love it.
I've got
All
a
right.
few interesting things here. So MI5, the sister organization to the CIA, they got a crack squad together, a think tank, and they decided to put up a team of specially trained gerbils together to sniff out spies in the 1970s. These were
Gerbils.
Yeah, in the airport. Yeah, these were TSA gerbils. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to use the gerbils to smell the rise in adrenaline of terrorists, but they had to cut the program because they realized that the gerbils couldn't tell the difference between a terrorist's adrenaline and a passenger's adrenaline who was scared of flying. Not that they could have thought about that before they spent all the money on it, but I mean, it's a common mistake. We're finding that all over the place, that people can't think of those things.
You know that scene in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory where the squirrels just like hundreds of squirrels just attack like the 10-year-old?
Yes, I think so.
That's what I'm picturing happening in the middle of like LaGuardia.
Gerbils.
On a Saturday afternoon, just you got like a 10-year-old girl and she's just ready and she's nervous. She's never flown before, and all of a sudden, just hundreds of gerbils just swarm. Oh my!
And of course, they're not
awful.
running. They're not running. They're rolling.
That's true. You just like swept away from
They're
your
all
parents.
it's a ball of gerbils. All right, I've got a fun little one. There was a squadron in World War II or World War I with biplane fighters, and they had a mascot that was a fox cub. How cool is that? That is all.
Yeah.
Another mascot, there was, so in the First World War, there was this German boat that had a pig as its mascot. His name was Tirpitz, and the ship went down, but Tirpitz survived, and he swam to another ship, and they said, "You are now our mascot."
I really thought you were about to say you are now bacon.
No. They were like, "You sacred pig, you survived. You are now our mascot." But they said that in like a German language or something. Well, anyway, they gave him a fake Iron Cross, which was a German military honor, and it served as their mascot for a while, and then it was auctioned off for pork.
Oh no!
Yeah, for the British Red Cross.
Oh, okay.
I was
going to say that's very German, but
yeah, I think it was after the war. I think they got custody of Tirpitz. There was another guy. His name was Wojtek, the soldier bear.
oh, I read about him.
And he was a pet mascot for the Transport Artillery Supply Company, which is part of the Polish army. And basically, they got him as they were going through Iran. They picked him up, and he was 250 pounds. And he went with them, and he would wrestle with them and play with them and stuff. And he got a service rank. He was a private. And he helped them carry ammunition and shells and stuff. The only thing I can think of is in Planet of the Apes when they have their gorillas being donkeys. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That's all I can think about
massive.
that. But with a happy bear, Soldier Bear was a happy dude. Wojtek.
Yeah.
You can't be Wojtek and be like kind of a sad slave.
No.
You're like happy to
that's a
serve your
happy bear.
country.
Mm-hmm.
A happy bear.
Gotcha. I have one more tidbit that I'd forgotten about, but you reminded me because when you brought up the pigs, which is that we all know about war elephants,
Yeah.
but the thing that was used to combat war elephants was pigs.
Oh.
Both Alexander the Great and the Roman conquests traveled with pigs, because what they would do is war elephants were scared by the squealing of pigs.
No, really?
Yeah, so they would whip the pigs into the frenzy and send them off directed at the war elephants, which would scare the war elephants and make them
No
stampede.
kidding.
Yeah.
So they would
There was
just
actually
go wild.
Yeah, there was one event, and I forget where it was. I neglected to write it down, but where they were under siege with an army with war elephants, and they covered the pigs with like tar and set them on fire.
No.
And like
once again, animal cruelty.
Yeah, full on Samson mode.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
just sends them off towards the elephants, and the elephants all stampeded and like killed a ton of their own soldiers. So
There's another
was the
reason why you
main-
don't use animals in warfare.
because someone else is better at it.
All right. Do you remember General Chiang Kai-shek in the in the Sino-Japanese War? Is it Sino or Sino?
Man, that's really slipping my mind right now.
So Chiang Kai-shek, I remember his name for some reason. I think I took East Asian history one time in college, didn't remember a thing. But Chiang Kai-shek, I remember that. Anyway, the only thing about him, he tried to get an army of monkeys, and he was like, "Hey, these guys are really agile," and he's like, "These guys can climb trees."
I can only tell you 50 bad reasons to do this.
Well, and guess what else he said? It follows the narrative they were setting everywhere else. Guess what else they
set
could
them
carry?
on fire? Bombs?
Yeah.
/ fire?
He's like, these guys could carry bombs. And which naturally, I mean, that is a thought that we think about any animal when we're in war. We're like, what animal could carry a bomb? And General Chiang Kai-shek, he's like, monkeys. Monkeys could carry bombs, which is true. Monkeys can carry bombs.
That is true.
Anyway, these monkeys were monkeys. They were stupid. And so he would send them in to go raid and go to like an enemy base. But instead of doing the military maneuver that they were supposed to be doing, the monkeys would go and steal their food, which probably was also harmful to these
That is
people.
true.
But they would steal the food, they would go sit up in the trees and eat the food, and they would kind of just cause chaos. But they also did that in their own bases. They would steal food, cause chaos. They tried to show them how to throw grenades, and the monkey threw a grenade back at the soldiers.
This is a common trend.
It didn't go off this time, but it was stupid. I don't know why. Why would you give an animal a bomb?
Here's the thing. I can understand the idea of let's train a pigeon who we can already train to fly that direction. You know, like I saw that pigeons in the U.S. Army had a 90% success rate. Like they were very successful. I can understand even dogs, because dogs are very easily trainable. Once we start talking about cats and monkeys, you have lost all your sanity if you think you can control those things to a point that they're not going to blow you up.
Yeah, there's no way.
No way at all.
All right, you got anything else?
Don't get it. No, that's about the sum total of what I got about animals.
One more thing, and I think
Please
it's a
go.
really good one to end on here today before
All
we
right.
head on to our segment, What Did We Learn? Major Sir Nils Olav. Have you ever heard of Nils Olav?
I weirdly know that name, but I couldn't tell you why.
Nils Olaf III is a king penguin. He's in the Norwegian army.
Currently?
Yes. And he is the third highest ranked individual in the Norwegian army.
Stop.
Yes. So
No.
yeah, So it started off basically that he was in a zoo And in the zoo, the soldiers nearby would go by and they would salute him because he looks like a little gentleman. And then they gave him, they promoted him, quote unquote, to corporal. They said, you are now Corporal Nils Olaf. And as time went on in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, he got several promotions. He went from mascot to corporal to sergeant to regimental sergeant major to honorable regimental sergeant major to colonel-in-chief to knighthood to brigadier sir, and then in 2023...
No.
To Major General.
No.
Yes. He holds the Guinness World
my
Record for being the highest ranking penguin.
Well, duh. Oh my word.
Like, I don't even know what
That's insane.
Like, what am I saying? As a citizen of the United States, as a legal citizen, as a good-willed citizen, what is my social responsibility knowing that Nils Olaf is the third highest ranking person in the Norwegian army while also being the highest ranked penguin? What's my social responsibility? What's expected of me now that I know this information?
I got nothing for you, man.
I
honestly think that this is going to take some soul searching for me.
Well, like, okay, information is so important. Like, it's good that I know this now. It's good that I know about Nils Olaf. But I don't know what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to post about it on Facebook. Like,
I feel like what you do with this is you treasure this information until the exact right moment when it is to bring it up.
So it's like a cocktail party fun fact.
That, and when Nils Olaf dies, you can be somebody who does post a tribute.
It's my boy, Nils.
Yeah. You can honestly say that you knew about Nils Olaf before it made the news that he died.
I knew this guy. We went way back. In fact, let me tell you his entire history, including all of his various positions. Because it does matter. These are things that are cultural. They matter. For all of you listening out there, if you know how we should be responding to this, like what is our social responsibility as people who know this information, just drop it in the comments. Let us know, because I am not satisfied with the direction that we've gone with this. I feel like there's something I need to do, but I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. And I think we need to ask ourselves as Americans, if there's going to be an animal that becomes a major general in the United States, what animal should receive that honor?
I mean, classically, you would say it would be the bald eagle.
That's true. That's very true. I think we should promote a bald eagle.
Why? What about like a bison?
I like that better.
Speaking of like, what's more army-like? What is more mighty? What shows the resilience of America? A bison.
Aren't bison endangered?
Well, yeah, I mean, we did that, but they withstood us doing that. The resilience of the American bison is that they withstood us endangering their species.
I'm for it.
So let's promote one. I think like Brigadier General would be a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, probably more competent than some of the other
what we learned today
generals we have out there.
I do feel like, though, whatever animal it is that we pick, it has to be able to live long enough to work its way up the ranks the same way that Nils Olaf did. So I don't know what the lifespan is on a bison. Like, what, 20 years?
I have no idea. Who are we kidding? We're not picking this.
Okay.
Somebody higher up is picking this. So, all right, let's go on to what did we learn?
I learned Never strap a frickin' bomb to literally anything alive under any circumstance, or else it's not going to work out.
I would agree with that. I think that's great. I learned that beehives were used as warheads back in medieval times to clear the deck.
I feel like we could bring that back too.
We could.
If we had to. Like, I feel like that probably will get brought back in like the newest conquests of American military.
That was like a medieval Molotov cocktail.
That's very accurate.
Thank you.
Just like, can you imagine, like, if you're on like the streets of Washington D.C. and there's a protest going on with like Antifa, and suddenly some guy just comes up with a beehive and just chucks it into a crowd of police.
Say hello to my little friend.
Friends.
Boom.
Love it. All right. Hey, I feel like we learned a lot this week.
We did.
I
learned a lot. Wow. I am exploding with knowledge.
Indeed. For all you listening out there, thank you so much for joining us this week. Be sure to follow us at Rapid Research Pod. We will see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening. Bye.